Hello everyone. In this video I'm going to draw 4 variations of realistic eyes. A soft shaded version using cotton swabs, an inked version using brush pens, a basic shaded version using only pencil, and lastly I'm going to do a quick sketch in a comic book or manga style. Now before we get started, I just want to mention that the average height to width ratio of the visible part of the eye white ranges from 30 to 40% as seen in this diagram. So keep in mind that the height of an eye is about 1/3 or slightly more than the width of the eye. So what you can do is you can divide the eye into thirds, and that's roughly the height of the eye. And of course you can customize these dimensions to create individual characters. Alright, so let's get drawing. So the first thing I'm doing is creating a grid with my large eye template, which you can download with the link in the description. I cut the width and height into quarters. The outside corner of the eye lands about halfway of the height of the eye, while the tear duct lands about 1/4 the height of the eye. So I like to mark all those places first, and then I like to put the little iris template in between the first and third quarters. And you'll notice that the iris of the eye can extend a little bit down and touch the bottom lid of the eye, while the top of the iris is going to extend anywhere from 20 to, I would say, 30% above the eye, but it never covers the pupil because of course you want to be able to see when you're in a relaxed state, so the top eyelid never comes down over the pupil unless you force it to by willing to close your eyes. And then I mark in the tear duct, and then I draw a curved line up to the top lid, and I'm deciding what to do here. I can decide to continue the top lid out to the outside corner of the eye, which again lands halfway from the top to the bottom of the eye. And now I'm doing the bottom lid, which I just run along the bottom guideline and go to the outside corner. And then I create the ledge of the bottom eyelid, which gets a little thicker going towards the outside. And it gets thicker because the skin tilts down a little bit, so we get to see more of it. And now I'm going to finish adding in the iris, placing it between the first and third quarters, and you can see I'm marking halfway horizontally and vertically, and that's going to be the center of the pupil. And now that all that stuff's in place, I can just get to drawing, and I'm just going to give myself some markers of how big I want the iris to be, and then I'm going to cut out a little chunk to create the specular highlight in the eye, the nice little shine. And I'm going to proceed to create the pupil. Shade it in lightly. Finish the tear duct. And you can see here I'm just cutting off a slice of my eraser to give myself a sharp edge of eraser to work with. And just doing a little bit of cleanup here. I'm going to put in the eyelid crease, and it basically follows the curve of the eyeball, of course. And you'll also notice that I make the inside edge of the crease a little wider, even though it is quite shallow, it's a little wider. And now I'm just going to block in roughly where I think the eyebrow might be. Eyebrows are not too far above the eyelid. I'm doing mine with a reasonably wide space, but not too wide. And sometimes they're even very, very close to the crease in the eyelid. So you can use reference and make a decision how high you want the eyebrow above the eyelid crease. Clean up here. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to erase the original drawing and then refine it. And I'm using my gum eraser, putty eraser I guess is a better way to say it. Using my putty eraser to lightly erase, and then I'm getting rid of a lot of these guidelines from the template before I do the finished drawing. Just doing some general cleanup. But I can still see the lines. And now I can go in and refine the drawing, now that I know where everything's going to be. I've decided I want the pupil to be a little bigger. Starting to put in the eyelashes, which are a lot of fun. I like to group mine and also have them cross over each other. I find that's pretty realistic. I like to make sure the eyebrows aren't all even because human eyebrows aren't evenly spaced. But if you're doing like a stylized character, you can do whatever you want, of course. And erasing the initial eyebrow shape here. But there's still enough there that I kind of know where I want to place the eyebrows when I get back to them. And now I'm going to use a 6B pencil here to darken things up. Grabbing a little cotton swab here to do some finer shading. I don't do a lot of hyper-realistic drawing, but I thought on this example here I would do a little more blending and shading using cotton swab. Adding some shadow to create some form on the eyeball, making it look a little rounder. And I find the outside edge of the iris is always a little darker and thicker. So I'm adding some thickness to the outside edge. And here I'm using a blending stump, which I kind of like, but it's not my favorite tool. And adding a shadow under the top lid of the eyeball. I find the Q-tips work really well for shading. When you add those lines in the iris, whatever they are, cones or rods or whatever, I've tried to find what the exact term is for them online, but I can't really find one term to describe what they are. But anyway, the lines in the iris, just make sure that you point them towards the center of the pupil, or they're going to look funny. Just adding in some shading on the top lid there, blending it in. And now we're going to redraw the eyelashes because they kind of got washed out with that shading there. And this gives me a chance to refine the lashes and change anything that I want to now. Sometimes an eyelash will start right inside the ledge of the eye. I've seen that in lots of pictures and it drives me crazy. But it's real, and but most of the time I don't like to draw my eyelashes starting inside the ledge of the bottom lid. Just kind of grosses me out. I also like to make sure that bottom ledge is nice and white because it reflects a lot of light. So we're finally getting back to the eyelashes, and while this is a video about drawing eyes, I thought I'd put in the eyelash to give the eye better context, and I'll do a video on how to do eyelashes, but I'm just going to rough one in here using a few different layers of lashes. So I'm adding in some soft shading to show the roundness of the eyeball underneath the open eye. And putting in some light shading above the eye. Okay, so we're back to shading underneath the eye here. In the end, I always seem to come back to the cotton swab. Some final little bits of erasing and blending and shading. I decided I wanted to do some better detailing on the eyebrows. And so after a little more blending and refining, we're done. So in part 2, we're going to draw another eye the same way we did in the first section, and then we're going to ink our drawing with brush pens. So we're going to start the same way, create a grid using our template. We're going to cut the width of it into quarters and the height of it into quarters and halves. So we're using the same proportions. The outside edge will be at the halfway point, and the tear duct will be about a quarter of the height of the eye. And as before, the iris will be placed in the middle of the eye because we're having our eye looking forward, and the bottom of the iris will touch the bottom lid, and the top of the iris is hidden by the top lid. And then it's just our basic construction work. We're going to form the tear duct and then draw the upper lid in a curve. Draw the bottom lid, let it ride along the bottom line of our template, and then curve it up to halfway point on the outer edge of the eye. Create the bottom ledge of the eyelid. So this part will be exactly the same as the first eye that we drew. And now we're looking to find where to put the pupil of the eye. Just draw some crosshairs for the center of the pupil. Draw a circle where we're going to put the shine of the eye, and then continue on with the pupil. So the same process as the first eye in this video, and that's good because we want to get used to a pattern so that we don't have to reinvent how we draw the eye every time. Drawing the upper lid crease. And I'm going to leave myself a little more room in this drawing because I know we're going to use the brush pen, and so the lines are going to end up being a lot thicker, so we might need a little extra room between different parts of the eye, I guess is what I'm trying to say. We don't need to do as much detail here because we're going to do a lot of it with the brush pen. Okay, so we're ready to start using the brush pens and inking our drawing. I'm going to use a fine point because I don't want the lines too thick. So I just love inking a drawing with a good brush pen. I like these Pigma Sakura brush pens that I'm using. I get them on Amazon. And you can make some really nice fine lines with them. Definitely when you start inking, do a few drawings that you haven't spent a lot of time on and you're not emotionally invested in because you are going to make mistakes. And you need to do a few drawings to get your hand used to how much pressure to put down on the tip so you can make the line very thin or thicken the line up by adding pressure. So it's just something you have to get used to. Definitely turn the page a lot so that your hand is working at its optimal arc and you get a nice curved line. Take your time when you're inking. You don't want to rush things and then put down some lines that you wish you hadn't. Okay, so I'm going to use a little thicker pen here to fill in the pupil of the eye a little quicker. But I always like to do the first pass on the outline of a portion of whatever I'm drawing. I like to do it with the fine pen. Once I have the contour lines, the outside drawn, then I'll fill it in with a thicker brush pen. And now that I'm done that, I'm just going to thicken the top lid here because the top lid usually creates a shadow, so we can afford to have a thicker line there for the top lid. And now we're back to the fine point brush pen. Keep turning the page so that your hand is working at the best angle for yourself. And now we're going to thicken up the outside edge of the iris. And now with some really light strokes, we're going to start doing the eyelashes. Don't press very hard at all. Do lots of practice strokes before you start doing your lashes. Alright, so I think that's looking pretty good. Just getting these last few lashes in there. And we're going to erase the underdrawing, but we're going to wait for a while until the ink dries thoroughly, because you don't want to start erasing while the ink is still a little bit wet and then get black smears and smudges all over your nice drawing. So you have to be patient. Alright, that's looking good. So in part 3, we're just going to do a basic pencil drawing and just do shading with the pencil. The one thing I want you to note here is, if you remember, I said that the width of the eye is 3 times the height, or we could also say that the height of the eye is 1/3 the width. So here I am taking the height of the eye and then multiplying it 3 times to get the proper width. So my original sketch was a bit too long, and so I'm measuring it, dividing it into thirds, and then using 1/3 as the height. Once we have the height, we're actually going to switch and divide the sides of the eye into quarters and halves. So as stated before, the tear duct comes in about 1/4 the height of the eye, and the outside corner of the eye is at about half the height of the eye. And then here we're just drawing in the bottom ledge, and everything's going to proceed as we've done before. Okay, I'm going to try and go a little quicker in this drawing here. Drawing the tear duct. Draw the bottom lid and draw in the bottom ledge of the eyelid. Now when we divide the eye into quarters, remember that we're just using the eye white. So we divide it in half, then divide it into quarters, and then we can put the iris inside the middle 2 quarters, because the iris covers approximately half of the white of the eye that's visible. Drawing some crosshairs so I know where to put the pupil. Just roughing everything out like we did before. Drawing in the crease of the eyelid. And then I'm just going to speed up the drawing and let it play out. I'm going to do the erase and refine method again. I've got everything pretty much in place how I want, and I'm going to erase those dark lines, and then I'm going to just go over them again and get my lines a little smoother and more refined. If you have time, that's always a great thing to do. Now I'm just erasing all my guidelines. Cleaning things up a bit. So in part 4, we're going to do a comic book / manga style eye. And you can see I'm going to make it quite narrow, not too tall. And you can also see that I'm going to do my dividing it into thirds again, because I can kind of tell by sight that I've made it too wide relative to the height. And then I'm just going to use our slanted rectangle modified a little bit, because by now you should be able to visualize the shape of the eye, at least inside the template that you have. And we're doing the tear duct. And I'm going to draw this rather quickly. We know what we're doing now, so this is just a different style. Okay, more of a manga-y thing. Just doing the construction work here really quick. Still going to put in that bottom ledge. I kind of like it. Do some rough shading in the pupil. And the eyelid crease, of course. And yeah, why not? Let's put in the eyebrow on this one. The eyebrow goes about to 3/4 of the eye and then slants down. I didn't like the bottom lid, so I'm going to refine it a little bit. That's better.
So once you get used to this, you can bang out a nice looking eye or a pair of eyes in not too much time. Maybe I'll do a how fast can I draw a realistic eye video sometime, like I did my 7-line manga eye. You get some good practice doing those kind of things. And with this drawing here, I'm going to do the eyelids a little more straight. Sorry, I said eyelids. I meant I'm going to do the eyelashes a little straighter, not so curvy. And there we go. We're done. I hope you enjoyed that. And let me know if there's something you'd like me to do a video on.